is going to be a memory indeed.
Smiling faces on the second day of his visit to India. President Kovind and President Trump exchanging a few words as this moment is captured for posterity. He has a lot of official meetings today, delegation level talks, an exchange of agreements perhaps. And then there is a lunch hosted by the Prime Minister, after which he will have meetings with the Vice President and the External Affairs Minister, and he will also visit the US Embassy in India. In the evening, there is a dinner hosted by the Indian President at Rashtrapati Bhavan, which will be an official banquet in honor of the visiting President of the United States of America. And of course, he leaves later in the night back to the United States. A really quick trip for the Trumps. We hope that they have enjoyed their sojourn, their maiden trip to India. The Cadillac making its way out now from the forecourt after the official reception hosted by the President of India to the visiting President of the United States of America.
From the forecourt of imposing Rashtrapati Bhavan, beautiful scenes of President Donald Trump and President of India and Prime Minister bidding adieu.
Mayank, Doordarshan has really been covering all the events related with his visit beautifully with its magnificent camera coverage. As we see the Prime Minister bidding goodbye to the President and Mrs. Kovind. The ceremony really coming to a close, but it's actually a beginning of an entire day of events that the Trumps and the Indian administration will be co-hosting in a way.
Absolutely. And the vision of Ek Bharat, Shresth Bharat and Sarv Shresth Bharat. When Prime Minister Narendra Modi says Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas and Sabka Vishwas, it is that trust, it is that confidence which brings America and India together.
His maiden visit to India, a reflection of the growing global strategic partnership between the two democracies, and an expression of the deep friendship that he has on a personal level with Mr. Narendra Modi. He talked about it at all his events. He mentioned that the US will be a loyal friend of India, and the kind of reception that he received and his family received will ensure that there is a special place in the Trump family's heart for India. The Prime Minister's car taking its way out of the forecourt. Namaste Trump, Namaste India, going to be those lasting words and lasting images as the 45th President of the United States starts his official part of the journey in the capital of Delhi.
And with this, we ask leave from our viewers. Thanks for watching. Namaskar. Jai Hind. Jai Bharat.
He landed yesterday. Reception that was accorded to his entire delegation and to the First Lady. He then proceeded to Agra, where he was part of the little ceremony where they got an opportunity to be with the Taj Mahal and get themselves photographed in the wonderful environs in Agra. And today they will be with us any moment. You can see on your screens the delegation from the United States already waiting here. We've got members from the Indian delegation as well.
In the discussions, because we don't even agree on what it is that we actually want or mean when we say Indo-Pacific. And now, as I mentioned to you, it means from California to Kilimanjaro, which is what India was also arguing for. But I think the interesting part is that Blue Dot Network that you talked about, and that's something the Americans have a way of doing things, of doing a voluntary or an ad hoc coalition. You remember that during Bush's time, it was called the Proliferation Security Initiative, which again was the coalition of the willing. in that sense. I mean, you could join it or you need not join it, etc. So, Blue Dot is again an infrastructure project in the Indo-Pacific with the private sector, which citizens would certify. There would be transparency, there would be no public funding or loans. That is the real distinction they are making. So, India has an option if it wants to join the economic architecture of the new 21st century United States planning. So, we have an opportunity to make a comprehensive alignment if we so wish, or join where we think, because the American statements are very clear. They are saying they would like India to do as much or as little or whatever it wants, if it wants to join. The idea is voluntary. So, in that sense it does give you leeway to imagine infrastructural development, and I do see that the Indo-Pacific and Indian Ocean in particular has tremendous significance, both security as well as economic security, because we do have, it is one of the biggest sea lanes of communication through which much of our trade actually happens. And we also have issues in terms of piracy, in terms of various other things. So, we have an Indian Ocean Rim association, where also we place our thinking and planning. So, I think India is moving on several fronts. It cannot be that we are just aligning for this visit optics, as you would call it, but I think we have a larger interest in which we are united in terms of making the sea lanes of communication open and free and inclusive. So, that is I think India's contribution, and there it is very clear that we would be aligning where we can, and where we have to, we would be able to manage on our own. So, both aspects will be on display, I would imagine.
And talking about India's engagements with countries around the world, including China and Russia, we have seen Prime Minister Modi hold informal summits with President Xi of China and President Putin of Russia. How would this visit by President Trump to India be viewed in, say, Beijing and Moscow? And talking about the Indo-Pacific, is there scope for multilateral or plurilateral or trilateral arrangements in the wider Indo-Pacific region, be it the JAI, the Japan, the USA and India trilateral, or even the other RIC, for instance, Russia, India, China, shaping up in the near future?
Well, these are parts that one does think about in terms of a global repositioning of various countries. But if you look at the major powers theory, or if you look at the idea that countries of today are also facing different uncertainties and challenges which force them to actually cooperate with each other without even the cementing of an alliance relationship. In other words, the transactional challenges, whether it is a pandemic, for example, right now the coronavirus is a major epidemic. We haven't heard it as a pandemic yet. For example, issues of piracy on high seas, for example, issues of labor standards that involve countries of various regions in terms of the produce that they bring to the market, trade related issues which affect millions of families in a smaller country or a developing country than to the Western countries. Though we have mechanisms like WTO and others, I would imagine that both economic and security challenges today are both regional and region specific as well as global. So, countries need to find a synergetic or a synergy in which they can maximize their interests and improve and advocate whatever is in their interest. So, I think to that extent India has been proactive and also has been maintaining its relationship with China and with Russia as two powers that have been Russia especially has been historically very close to us, and even today we have a defense relationship which as you well know has a very large component of our defense purchases are from Russia. So, I think to that extent we have been nimble, but also aligning in a way that can help us actually come forward and be counted as one of the major power centers of the world. If we want to be influential, as we I think are aspiring to be in the UN Security Council, we need also the support of very major powers, and Russia and China remain major powers who would have Of course, the Chinese have so far been very difficult in terms of accepting our aspirational or otherwise. We have been we have been persuading nations that we need to be at the UN Security Council and take part in the global arrangements for the world. But I think India's credentials are getting burnished and polished because of the kind of diplomacy that we have been seeing for the past few years, both in terms of being inclusive in conceptualization and visualization, but also not hesitating to be firm and taking an action where our interests are at play. And I think further, we have also been very clear about how we need to interact with the major powers that have been part of our both history and the present, and they would certainly play a part in our future.
The US-Taliban peace deal is likely to come up for discussion. We were discussing this, but there are certain red lines that India has enumerated in the past on any such peace process. The first is that all initiatives and processes must include all sections of Afghan society. The second being that any process should respect the constitutional legacy and political mandate. And the third being that any process should not lead to any ungoverned spaces that terrorists or terrorist proxies should occupy. Do you expect Prime Minister to underline these red lines during the discussions today?
I would, in the sense that it may not be called a red line. It would be couched in probably diplomatese that would explain with some ease to the Americans that these are mutually reinforcing interests that both of us need to have. Look at the stuff that you mentioned, Manman. All of them, not having ungoverned spaces means avoiding a failing state. And that's really a concern for America as it leaves Afghanistan eventually. It needs to not leave a failed state. So that's a very important mutual gain there. There's also another, see, like I said, the whole conditionalities, they're not conditions, they're actually mutually reinforcing goals that we can both work towards. So I think to that extent, there would be a receptivity and a sensitivity from the Americans, because we have put our minds to this and said that, look, if you have invested in bringing up the Afghan constitution and its political process onto a particular platform, don't now denigrate it by pushing it out of the negotiations or discussions, because they have a far more bigger stake than any one outer powers in terms of deciding the future of Afghans. And India's fundamental position is and has been always that Afghan must decide for itself, and that means including all the stakeholders, and there's nothing really difficult about that position, because it is a decent position, it is the right position, and I think that has had reverberations in Afghanistan as well. And I think you can see Afghanistan also measuring friendship and ties and providing more security alignments and security understanding to a country in the region that argues for a broad stakeholder approach.
Absolutely.
And I think
Professor
that's
Vijayalakshmi, hold your thoughts. We are now seeing US President Donald Trump and First Lady Melania Trump having arrived at Rajghat to pay respects and tributes to India's father of the nation, Mahatma Gandhi. Rajghat is a memorial to Mahatma Gandhi. It's located not far from the river Yamuna, and it was here where Mahatma Gandhi's last rites were performed on the 31st of January 1948, a day after his death. We often see foreign dignitaries coming here to Rajghat to pay respects to Mahatma Gandhi, and US President Donald Trump is doing it for the second consecutive day in a row after he tried his hand at the charkha and learned about Mahatma Gandhi's contribution to India's freedom struggle from none other than Prime Minister Narendra Modi, who also unveiled to him 3 monkeys that symbolize hear no evil, speak no evil, and see no evil. In fact, that memento was also gifted to the Trumps yesterday at Sabarmati Ashram, and now we are seeing Donald Trump and Melania Trump coming to Rajghat in New Delhi an hour after they got a ceremonial reception at Rashtrapati Bhavan, and here they'll be paying tributes to Mahatma Gandhi, India's father of the nation. Well, here a black marble platform marks the spot of Mahatma Gandhi's cremation. Many tourists and especially foreign dignitaries come here to pay respects to Mahatma Gandhi. His last words, "Hey Ram," are inscribed on the marble, which is always adorned with flowers. The memorial was designed by Vanuji Bhuta, who intended it to reflect the simplicity of Mahatma Gandhi's life. It is uncovered with an eternal flame that burns continuously at one end. In fact, remembrance ceremonies are regularly held there. They are held every Friday at Rajghat. Prayer sessions take place on Mahatma Gandhi's birth as well as death anniversaries. There is also a Gandhi Memorial Museum where films are shown about Mahatma Gandhi's life and philosophy. Within the complex, there are trees that are labelled near the platform, which were planted by various dignitaries, including Queen Elizabeth II, former Australian Prime Minister Gough Whitman, Ho Chi Minh, even former US President Dwight Eisenhower, and many others. And US President Donald Trump said on Monday at a public event in Ahmedabad's Motera Stadium, which is the Namaste Trump event, that he will lay a wreath and plant a tree at Rajghat in honor of Mahatma Gandhi, who is revered all around the world. So we are standing by for US President Donald Trump and First Lady of the United States of America, Melania Trump, to lay a wreath in honor of India's father of the nation, the man who was the architect of India's independence that India finally got on 15th August 1947. And we're also standing by for him to plant a tree, just like his predecessor, former US President Dwight Eisenhower, had done, and several other dignitaries that came here from the world over did, including Queen Elizabeth II, former Australian Prime Minister, Ho Chi Minh, and many others. Rajghat is a memorial to Mahatma Gandhi. There was the Rajghat gate of the walled city opening at Rajghat on the Yamuna. Eventually, the memorial area was also called Rajghat. It was here where Gandhi's last rites were performed on the 31st of January 1948, one day after his death. The memorial to Mahatma Gandhi is located between Ring Road and the banks of the Yamuna River towards the southeast of the Red Fort. To give you an idea of the location, this is 4 kilometers away from Rajpath. A black marble platform marks the spot of Mahatma Gandhi's cremation. A wreath is being brought. Gandhi's last words, "Hey Ram," are inscribed on the marble, which is adorned with flowers. The memorial has been designed in such a manner that it reflects the simplicity of Mahatma Gandhi's life, because he was a man who was extremely comfortable in the most basic of clothing. He wore a simple dhoti, and that was symbolic of the rules of simplicity that he lived by. Mahatma Gandhi is an epitome of simplicity, and on such an occasion one is reminded of the principles of Mahatma Gandhi as well, of peace and ahimsa, which is non-violence, of maintaining the lowest carbon footprint possible, because Mahatma Gandhi's life was one of the lowest carbon footprint. And you are seeing US President Donald Trump and First Lady of the United States of America, Melania Trump, standing and paying respects to Mahatma Gandhi after having laid a wreath. This stop is extremely important in terms of the emotional relationship that India and the United States share. In terms of symbolism, the stop is extremely significant. Foreign dignitaries make it a point to come to Rajghat to pay respects to Mahatma Gandhi. US President Donald Trump had gone to Sabarmati Ashram in Gandhinagar, paying tributes to the Mahatma, trying his hand at the charkha. He mentioned at the Motera Stadium speech yesterday to Rajghat, laying a wreath and also be planting a tree in memory of Mahatma Gandhi. 150th birth anniversary of Mahatma Gandhi is being globally commemorated. In fact, the United Nations also paid tribute to Mahatma Gandhi with solar panels installed on its roof. That was inaugurated in September last, when Prime Minister Narendra Modi was there to attend the last session of the United Nations General Assembly. So Mahatma Gandhi forms a strong bond between India and the United States, and between India and several countries. He is a man who is revered the world over for the principles that he lived by, for having ensured India's independence without the use of violence. One is reminded of the principles of Mahatma Gandhi on such an occasion. So the wreath has been laid by the Trumps, and now we expect the tree planting exercise also to take place. Dwight Eisenhower had planted a tree, just like Queen Elizabeth II, former Australian Prime Minister Gough Whitman, Ho Chi Minh, and several other dignitaries have. This is the wreath that was laid by the Trumps at Rajghat. And now we are standing by for the tree planting exercise. So that was a tribute to Mahatma Gandhi by the Trumps, and we continue to be joined by Professor Vijay Lakshmi. Professor Vijay Lakshmi, your word on the way the whole world is commemorating 150th birth anniversary of Mahatma Gandhi. At the UNGA, we saw how several solar plants, in fact 123 of them, symbolizing the several member states of the UN, were inaugurated on the rooftop of the United Nations headquarters. Your thoughts on the way he is revered the world over?
Well, I think it speaks for India's emergence on the world scene in such a non-violent and principled way. It takes the heartbeat of India of today, but it connects it to India's birth, you know. And the relevance of Mahatma Gandhiji on a world stage is also indicative of the kind of heroes that we are looking for today. In a troubled world, the words of peace are alone not enough. The means towards achieving peace have begun to capture the imagination of world audiences and world governments.
Professor Vijay Lakshmi will take this forward. We are now seeing how US President Donald Trump is writing in the visitor's book. He did that at the Sabarmati Ashram as well, where he thanked Prime Minister Narendra Modi for the hospitality extended to him. And now this is yet another occasion for US President Donald Trump to pen his thoughts on the Rajghat, on Mahatma Gandhi, on the kind of hospitality that he's been extended by India in the course of his first ever visit as US President to India. Melania Trump looking by as US President Donald Trump pens his thoughts at the visitor's book at Rajghat. It's a moment that touches millions of hearts in India and the world over, because Mahatma Gandhi is revered for his sacrifices, for his endless contributions to India's freedom struggle. His global stature is unrivaled. Not just India, but the world is celebrating 150th anniversary of Mahatma Gandhi. Vaishnav Jan has been sung by musicians the world over, and that shows how Mahatma Gandhi continues to be a strong bond between India and the rest of the global community. A Gandhi Peace Garden was also inaugurated when Prime Minister Narendra Modi was in New York. That was in September last, for the last UNGA. And there were several world leaders who had gathered there at New York to pay tributes to Mahatma Gandhi. A stamp was also released in honor of Mahatma Gandhi in New York. So that connect between India and the United States, which is the Gandhi Connect, is now growing stronger. United States has been visible in terms of commemorations to Mahatma Gandhi. Donald Trump continues to pen his thoughts in the diary or the visitor's book at Rajghat, a memorial to Mahatma Gandhi, where the last rites of Mahatma Gandhi were performed on the 31st of January 1948, a day after his death. That's the Rajghat, where a wreath has been laid by the Trumps, and now Melania Trump penning her thoughts as well. A solemn moment and a moment of celebration as well. A pensive moment, and you are seeing a bronze bust being gifted to US President Donald Trump and First Lady of the United States of America Melania Trump by Union Minister Hardeep Puri. Yesterday also at the Sabarmati Ashram, mementos were presented to the Trumps that included a statue of 3 monkeys that symbolize what Mahatma Gandhi always believed in: hear no evil, speak no evil, see no evil. Mahatma Gandhi lives in the hearts and minds of millions of Indians and in the hearts and minds of all in the global community. For 2 years, India and the global community are celebrating the 150th birth anniversary of Mahatma Gandhi. The wreath laid by Donald Trump and First Lady of the United States Melania Trump at Rajghat, the memorial to Mahatma Gandhi. Earlier in the day, we saw how the ceremonial reception was accorded at Rashtrapati Bhavan to Donald Trump and Melania Trump. And now you're seeing how the Trumps are leaving the Rajghat premises after having paid the tributes to Mahatma Gandhi. Donald Trump had stated yesterday at Motera Stadium that he will be laying a wreath and planting a tree at Rajghat in honor of Mahatma Gandhi, who's revered all around the world. Foreign dignitaries visit India and make it a point to pay respect to Mahatma Gandhi by laying flowers or wreaths on the platform like you are seeing. This place also offers lessons on the life and philosophy of Mahatma Gandhi in the form of a Gandhi Memorial Museum, where films are shown on his life and philosophy. Remembrance ceremonies are held every Friday at Rajghat, along with prayer sessions held on Gandhi's birth anniversaries as well as death anniversaries. Gandhi's last words, "Hey Ram," are inscribed on the marble which is always adorned with flowers. And now, US President standing by, a symbolic gesture of planting a tree, filling in sand, the drums, thus planting a tree in the premises of Rajghat. He joins several dignitaries by doing that, because trees labelled near the platform within the complex were planted in the past as well by various dignitaries, including his predecessor and former US President Dwight Eisenhower. There's a Gandhi Peace Garden in New York that was inaugurated when Prime Minister Narendra Modi was in New York, that has the trees that symbolize the 50 different states of the United States. This is extremely important considering that Mahatma Gandhi had the lowest ever carbon footprint. His was a life full of simplicity. He adorned a simple dhoti and believed in respecting Mother Nature, not exploiting it at all. And that is why planting a tree is a mark of honor for Mahatma Gandhi. You're looking at Trump's engrossed in a conversation with Union Minister Hardeep Puri. Perhaps Donald Trump would be asking him about the history of Rajghat, the life and philosophy of Mahatma Gandhi, and the relevance of Gandhi's life and philosophy in contemporary times. The world needs the principles and values of Mahatma Gandhi today more than ever before, considering the conflict situations that have emerged in the recent past between different regions of the world, the growing challenge of extremism and terrorism. As the world unites, as India and the United States unite in the fight against radical terrorism and extremism, these principles that Mahatma Gandhi stood for, the values that he lived by, become extremely significant. Mahatma Gandhi's role in India's freedom struggle cannot be overemphasized. He led the freedom struggle that connected the whole of India, from South India to North India, Central India, Western India, Eastern India. There were several movements that Mahatma Gandhi spearheaded. He joined the Vaikom Satyagraha in Kerala that had a lot of impact on the social life in South India. Besides that, the time that he spent in Ahmedabad and Gandhinagar also shaped the Indian independence struggle. We've seen the Trumps now moving out of the Rajghat complex after laying the wreath in honor of Mahatma Gandhi and planting a tree in honor of India's father of the nation. So, Professor Vijayalakshmi, we're talking about how important Gandhian values and principles are in contemporary times.
Well, yes, but I have also mentioned earlier, Munmun, that the message that Gandhiji brings is also relevant to this generation of young people who are waking up to modern India and modern world that they live in. But in particular, the Americans, especially the civil rights movement and those who are connected with it, and those who have, in fact, the grandson of Martin Luther King visited India and had been very, very clear about how impactful Gandhiji's message was. So I think both in terms of inspiration and aspiration, a Gandhian philosophy still holds a huge message for the humanity, and it also appeals as a socially integrating force in terms of becoming, as you mentioned, simple, living with nature. And I think largely you're seeing smaller movements in the world today that are going towards organic farming, organic food, living with, not exploiting nature, using resources. A little should go a long way. All these philosophies are seemingly resonant with not just, people who sit and think about these things, but who are also young people whom you're seeing a large thing. And another thing is, because of the technology we have today and the kind of Twitter and social media that has taken over communications in such a mass and rapid way, you have these ideas also becoming again, a kind of robustness has come back into the thought processes of people in terms of accommodating Gandhian philosophy into daily life. And I think simplicity, inspiration and aspiration, all the three words describe India. It's not only India who's fascinated and continues to be inspired by Gandhiji, but I think a larger message for the world.
Absolutely, and now we are also expecting a lot of formal engagements in terms of substance and outcomes to play out at Hyderabad House once the agreements are signed and exchanged and press statements take place and a joint statement is issued. There's surely a lot in terms of substance that will come out from this visit of US President Donald Trump to India. Stay tuned to DD India. We'll take a breather now, but this is the channel where you'll get the most comprehensive and credible coverage of US President Donald Trump's India visit. Stay tuned.
India's friend. Namaste, Trump. Namaste, Trump.
Namaste. Namaste.
Security.